because anyone can start a blog and have 3 people read it, or 3 million people read it. I think that's why the Vine is really great, a tie-in of the two things. Like, you can be a really amateur writer or producer of content, and you can have your writing exposed to a bigger audience. So I think by being tied into the Fairfax network, it's very professional, and you get a lot more people looking at your work. I think we're getting around 7 million impressions per month. So there's a lot of people coming to the site. There's a lot of people reading your work. So it gives you that opportunity to really hone those skills.
When we're hiring leadership, we're the same boat. We got all our guys, most of our lead, we got all our lead programmers, artists, designers. They all came from Chrome Studios, who went. Anyway,
they died.
And we picked them up the next day, which was a really great timing for me. Thank you very much. But when we hire juniors, we only hire advanced hobbyists, because it's the nature of the industry. For us as a small business, we're only at a headcount of about sort of 11 to 14 sort of variant, and every junior is like a hardcore hobbyist on steroids, because it's the only people we want. We don't take university graduates because they're about as, I'll be really honest, they're not very useful. Because you can go and hire a kid who's 19 years old, who's been doing this in his bedroom since he was 16. I've got one guy who works from home. His name's Michael Devbeck. Look him up. His name's Bench. The guy has failed his film course, and he's the best Flash quick animator programmer I know. The guy can build everything from start to finish by himself. I send him a project. He does the job of 3 people that, and the guy's 21 years old.
I have a lot of people that just had their own blogs, that no one was reading, but they had the initiative and they were committed to it, and they were writing great content, and now I'm paying them to do that. So, I think there's a lot of value in initiative over experience in terms of writing, which is, I guess, an uplifting story for students, because if you're writing and you're passionate about it and you're having fun more than anything, I think if you're having fun with it, then that's the best thing you can be doing, to be getting people noticing it, getting people reading it, and then getting paid for it.
I've hired people straight out of uni at other companies, so you get 20 CVs and they've all done group projects at the end, so they've all got the same reels basically, and you have, so that in and of itself, I don't know whether someone's better than someone else from their CVs, and they never separate out the individual pieces of work that they did in that group project. So there's ways to do that, with film or whatever, or screenshots, and sort of call out the part they did.
I think it's really hard, because simply for the fact that the US is massive, and anyone that says that the money isn't in the US is pretty much wrong. The money is in the US. It comes from the US. To give you a scope, their games market is $16 billion a year. Our games market is not 16 billion. So there's more Xboxes in California than there are people in Australia. So put that into perspective, there you go. But one thing that I do believe, I think Australia is one of the best test markets you can ever do for digital media, because we have great accessibility, we have great mobile networks, we have crappy internet, but we have a lot of other things, and we have a really diverse culture, which means if you can make something work in Australia, specifically Newcastle, for some reason, there's actually a really good business case behind that, for you actually going out, proving that you can do something, and then taking that to a bigger market. I honestly think that where we're at in the moment, I think the next 3 to 4 years we'll see people like you guys doing some amazing things. I think that the way digital media is opening up, I just shot a film and edited it in my bedroom. I finished last night at 4 a.m. And it's not that difficult anymore. It's so easy to do that anyone can go and do this stuff pseudo-professionally, without much resources. So I think that we should be okay. We should be quite fine, and we've got a good market to get some feedback on. So I think we're quite set. Considering our population and the size we are, we're in a damn good position.
So you don't have to target Australian markets to be successful, as an Australian company. So with iPhone and Steam and other platforms that are coming out. So I think there's opportunities there to move beyond Australia.
I think that it's all relevant. I think you should do a little bit of everything. Just, it's really good foundation. It's really silly really interesting to see how many of those parallels are drawn, because I didn't do games, and even though I produce games now, there's a big relevance between the skills that I learnt in film and its application in games.
The opportunities in the games industry for the media guys is really, really broad. So this is everything from cinematics, so the guys who actually direct how the cutscenes, not just the pre-rendered cutscenes, but also the in-game cutscenes. So when you've got sequences of people talking together, you know, to give emotion and to give a sense of whatever it is that you're trying to portray in the story. There's guys who do that. There's guys that do musical scores. There's guys that do script writing. There's motion capture directors, actors, voiceover artists, you know, absolutely everything. So pretty much everything that you do in the media course, particularly for film, you can transfer and you can find an opportunity in games.
I think we're all in the business of telling stories. I think every moment we tell a story. I think every time you have a product, every time you do an update to that product, you're releasing something, you're telling the story about your product, you're telling that it's growing. And it's really, and just like you guys, you have a Facebook account, yeah? You guys are doing your autobiography, whether you like it or not. And that's a storytelling platform. And if you treat it like a storytelling platform, you might change the way you use it a bit. But ultimately, it is a storytelling platform. This is a storytelling platform. And I think that if you sort of zoom out a little bit, that we're all telling stories, whether we like it or not. And if we adopt that kind of mind frame, it can be a little helpful in just adjusting sort of some of the things to make sure that we don't have nudie pictures of us running around in things on our Facebook. So, because that's really important these days to learn, is that we're all telling stories all the time.
If people out there, a new employer or potential employer does a Google search on you, if they see a whole bunch of stuff, you know, on Twitter and things like that, then that's good.
If I had a writer and they wanted to write and they didn't have any kind of online presence, they didn't have Twitter, or they weren't doing, you know, communicating in the online space, then, you know, I wouldn't be in a hurry to commission them to do work, because who are they going to share it with? Who are they having conversations with? Who are they actively engaged with that is relevant, you know? I think it's important.
So, 3 years ago, I went to a conference called Cross Media Lab, and do you know Cross Media Lab? Oh, brilliant conference. I highly recommend, if you can go to it, go to it. It's the best digital media think tank you will go to. It happens in Melbourne, and it's like government subsidised. It's like $300, but it's worth it. Guarantee you, best thing. And what they do is they get the world's best professionals, and they bring them in, and then they boot camp you with them. And I was lucky enough to be in my 3rd year, and I presented my ideas to them. At the end of the conference, I made a lot of friends, and a lot of really high professionals. These guys were world class, you know, or I've won a couple of Oscars, or, you know, I do Oprah's Digital, or, you know, I made MTV, or I created Atari kind of guys, you know, really high level. You know. And one of them, or I created CAD, computer animated drafting, and same guy also made GrandTel, and then sold to Google. And at the end of it, he was really nice, and he invited us out for dinner, and I caught up with him. And at the end of it, I added him to Facebook because I felt it was okay. And I added all of those guys to Facebook because I felt it was okay. And that was when I changed my attitude on Facebook. I said, my Facebook is now my storytelling mechanism to tell these guys what I'm going to do. And for 3 years, I drilled at it. I went back to LA 2 months ago, and Ken, who was the guy who created CAD, is rated kind of one of Hollywood's most connected guys. And I hadn't seen Ken for 3 years, but I spoke to him online a few times, and he'd been watching my feed, and he took me under his wing, and I spent the week going around with him to everything and anything. And I went to his parties, I went into his networks, and he dropped me straight in there. And at the end of it, he said, you know, in LA, I'll be your bigger brother. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't spend 3 years working towards that. And I can guarantee you that it worked very well for me. The parties were sick. It's really, you know, it sounds really stupid, and my friends at the time, and I had to work really hard to convince them, do not tag me in a photograph in my jocks. because I love running around in my jocks at a party, but no photographs, please. You know, and I worked really hard. My friends, you know, after about a year ago, they really adopted it and they saw the results. So, but it worked really well. Like, add me to Facebook. Like, keep in touch. I add everybody to Facebook. I don't care. Like, I have a different approach to it. Like, you know, I'm bloody YGens these days. Like, I add it, you know, because to me, the way I see it is that if someone like you guys adds me to Facebook, you clearly want to add me for a reason. You want to get in touch with me. So, why would I say no? I'll just say okay, unless you're some girl from the Philippines. You know you. Anyway, but I'll cut the long story short. But, you know, I really encourage you guys to go out there. If you meet someone, I add them to Facebook. I say, oh yeah, and I say, oh, I met you here, or da 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 da, and it worked. It worked for me really well. And but you have to curate your Facebook in a way that allows it, and that was, I think, is the cornerstone to my career.